Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Oscar's Corner Cafe or Oscar's Cafe Corner, whichever one you prefer to say it. Um, Today's date is September 13th, 2026. And welcome, and I'm glad everybody's back here for these episodes. Thank you for those returning listeners, and for those brand new ones, welcome back. God bless. Hopefully you guys love the episode. Make sure you like and subscribe and share as often and as many times as you see fit. So I got a bit of news. So number one, which I'll start off with, is who saw the weekend games for NFL football, who saw the playoffs, who saw the shenanigans, and who would have thought that the San Francisco 49ers would beat the Eagles in Philadelphia? I sure as hell did not. You can call me all you want saying, oh, dude, you're being two-faced, you're not being loyal to the team. Nah, bro, sometimes you got to be realistic. Either the team has it or they don't, and I don't care if you want to call me, oh, you're just a follower, you're not a true fan. No, that's not really it. I got to be realistic about shit. If about over half of my team is literally injured, and then we are going to have to go across the country to an already ruckus crowd in Philadelphia, then the odds of me actually having a successful outcome after this game are very, very small and highly unlikely. So the fact that they did what they did with the staff that they do is incredibly amazing. Jalen Hurts definitely needs a brand new offensive coordinator, because I don't know what the hell the guy was doing. I have no clue what he was calling, but it was definitely where it's not going to be a winning script. I guess that's the way I could say. And Kyle Shanahan definitely outcoached their head coach. He outcoached Vic Fangio, who is a legend in a lot of the NFL circles. If you don't know who he is, he's the defensive coordinator. So basically, he schemes up a lot of the defensive plays and formations for a professional football team, right? So the success of your defense is predicated on the schemes that this gentleman calls and the way that they're executed on the field. So, but this guy has been in the league for decades. He has a proven track record of having successful defensive schemes. And from his coach tree, I guess you could say, multiple current head coaches, Robert Saleh, you could say DeMeco Ryan, a lot of these guys have been under the wing of some of these gentlemen, right? Like a Mr. Vic Fangio. But the game started off phenomenal. I think the San Francisco 49ers had their first initial drive, and it was crazy good. I mean, you had DeMarcus Robinson, who nobody had even heard of the entire season. I completely forgot we even had him in the team. And he looked like a number one wide receiver. And I think it was like the second or third play, Brock Purdy threw a slant right down the middle. DeMarcus Robinson catches it. He runs for, I think, 20 or 30 more additional yards, puts the Niners in a really good spot. And then I think the play after that, Brock Purdy throws a strike to Christian McCaffrey, who I'll dive into that one in a second. And then I think after that, there was a touchdown right after that, and to DeMarcus Robinson right down the middle, I think by the field goal post. And that started the game. And then you're like, oh, damn, this is going to be a fucking shootout. And then all of a sudden, the Eagles respond back with their drive. They respond. They score a touchdown to Goddard, who's also a very solid tight end. And I noticed that Jalen Hurts, he has a particular affinity of checkdowns, right? And a lot of people criticize him for saying that, for doing that. That he doesn't go to Devontae Smith enough. He doesn't go to A.J. Brown enough. And he kind of just settles when he just doesn't see it up the field. And people criticize him on that. Honestly, I think that's a pretty smart way to go about it. Why am I going to do a high-risk pass versus when I know I have Saquon Barkley at the hashes directly 5 yards in front of me, where he can make and break a tackle and run for another 15 yards? Or maybe I can go to Dallas Goedert, who's 15, 20 yards away, and he's going to catch the ball and give me a first down. The objective of the game is to move the first down farther down the field so you're able to be placed in a good spot where you're going to score a TD. And they did. Unfortunately, their kicker missed the extra point, so it was 7-6 after that. And then I think the Niners had the ball again, and it was a really tight game in the first half. And then the Eagles got the ball again, and they scored another touchdown with Goddard. We had a phenomenal game. Jalen Hurts was not making any mistakes. He didn't turn the ball over. Saquon Barkley was the one that was a big surprise for me, just because they basically shut him down. There was very little success as far as the run game. So when you make a team like the Eagles and you force them to be one-dimensional, it puts them in a particular bind, because now the offensive coordinator, who is the equivalent to the defensive coordinator, which is basically going to be scheming up the plays to be successful and put you in positions of a scoring probability, it limits the script that he can use. It limits the weapons that he can use, and it forces Jalen Hurts to look for Devontae Smith and look for A.J. Brown. Unfortunately, nothing was happening. So Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, did his job. He locked Saquon Barkley down. They made Jalen Hurts uncomfortable. He couldn't find anybody open, and they kept the Eagles to a very low margin of points, which is something that they did also in the previous week against the Seahawks, who had been putting up, I think, on average, 30, 35 to even 40 points on teams, and I only kept them to 13. So Robert Saleh drawing up a scheme that he has with the staff that he's got is absolutely incredible. And if this team goes as far that I think they will allow themselves to go, because it all depends on schemes and how successful you are, it's an incredible season. I mean, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is not a magical season until they win the Super Bowl. Not really. If you have, right now we're playing with house money, right? Like, there is very little expectation of the team to make it to the Super Bowl. I think that after they lost the Week 18 game against the Seahawks, I think a lot of critics, especially people from the East Coast, especially folks like Colin Hurd and other podcasters, basically dismissed the San Francisco 49ers, but they don't have the weapons. But there's one factor that you miss, and a lot of athletes know this. It's how you want it, and if you have heart to get it done. It's about determination. It's about the want. It's about the hunger within you to push yourself that one extra rep, that one extra yard. You're not going to settle for 8. You're going to try to get 9. And the way that the San Francisco 49ers are playing, I think it's kind of showing to the NFL teams that you can have a B team and play like a stellar team, just based on having the drive and the rest of the team buying in to one common goal. And it's incredibly amazing when you see it on a professional level with folks that are getting paid millions of dollars. These gentlemen want it. And I think some of them were literally sitting on the couch. They weren't even second thought to a lot of different other teams. And the fact that they're playing for the San Francisco 49ers and they're being given an opportunity to show out and play this way, and they're unified, their locker room is so tight knit. I mean, they're playing not just for the coach, but it's a vibe that you kind of see that they're playing for each other. And these are young kids too. I mean, we're talking about rookies that have not even smelled the professional field until this season, and are telling you and are showing you that they got it. So I wouldn't be surprised if come next year that a lot of these players that we're seeing now, like Upton Stout, Bethune, a lot of Hendrickson, a lot of these very low profile, no name guys are being given opportunities to do something more in other teams because they're seeing what good coaching can do. And at the same time, you also have to think about, what is Robert Saleh's end game in all of this? Is he actually going to be coming back, or is there a high probability that he's going to be going somewhere else? I personally think he's going to write it out one more year and wait for the right opportunity, because you have so many freaking good coaches. I mean, Mike Tomlin just basically said that he's going to step down from the Steelers. After 19 years, guys, Mike Tomlin is finally walking away from the Steelers. And then you had John Harbaugh from the Ravens. He's also available. And a couple of other coaches that are just out and about. So the pool of high quality coaches is there. It's just a matter of going to the right organization. Do you want to play for the Raiders or do you want to play for the Giants? If you don't want to play for the Giants, who do you want to play for? Do you want to play for the Dallas Cowboys? Do you want to play for Baltimore? You want to play for the Saints? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of teams that are going to be making changes, and it's going to be utterly exciting to see what the offseason looks like and what people are going to do. But I digress. Back to the team and back to the game. So the second half, the San Francisco 49ers start off hot. Their defense completely locked down Saquon Barkley, which it was amazing for me to see. But at the same time, I'm not surprised because they did it to Jonathan Taylor when they played the Colts. They shut him down. So the Niners are capable of holding down running backs. They scheme well against it. What really kills the San Francisco 49ers are slot receivers with the abilities like Jackson Smith-Jigba and Puka Nacua. They're small. When I mean small, they're under 6'5". They're compact, but they're strong as hell. So, like, I don't know if a lot of you know who Edelman was for the Patriots, but basically, he was a gritty, grimy little slot receiver that Tom Brady would throw the ball to. It didn't matter where it went, and Edelman would get it. He was just scrappy. He was hard to tackle. He was tough as hell, and he had excellent drive. He wasn't the biggest receiver, but you knew for a fact that Brady was looking for him. Those were solid hands. They were sure hands, and the guy would do... He would ball out just for you. That's one of the reasons why Tom Brady was highly successful with Edelman and with Gronk. Gronk was a big-ass tight end, big, huge target, strong, athletic, and could get the job done. So you can do these a lot of things, right? You can do this. And the San Francisco 49ers, they struggle against slot receivers like this. They always do. So how this game is going to play out against Seattle, honestly, I can see it as a toss-up on this one. I don't see it as a complete disadvantage because I think Seattle and San Francisco know each other too well. I think they know each other well enough to the point that they can make it very difficult for each other. I mean, a lot of division games in general typically have the same scheme, have the same play style, have the same type of athletic ability on each team. They scheme up the same. I mean, they see each other often throughout the year. So those games are always tough as hell. With the exception of the Los Angeles Rams, who spanked the shit out of the Niners when they played them. But at the same time, you have one-offs like that. But for the most part, in the playoffs, when you're having two division rivals, it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be grimy. It's going to be scrappy. It's going to be very chippy. There's going to be a lot of stuff talking on the field. You might see a couple flags. That's the other thing, too. The discipline of the San Francisco 49ers as far as penalties, very low on this game. So that was another thing, that they were not their worst enemy. They showed up to Philadelphia to win the game. And I'm not saying this, I'm not showing up like right now to say, oh, you're being a total homer. No, I'm not. I love my team, but at the same time, I know what I'm seeing on the field. And you can be a football fan and respect the Niners. Like, you can respect George Kittle as a San Francisco 49er fan or non-fan. George Kittle's a phenomenal tight end. Athletic, strong as hell, tough to bring down, and then my guy balls out. I mean, he's the type of player that a lot of the kids these days in high school, you want them to emulate that. You want them to live up to that drive. He enjoys the game. He has fun. He blocks. He doesn't bitch. He doesn't complain. He just gets his job done, defends his team, and does it well. And he goes at 1,000%. And you see the product on the field to the point where he injures himself because he pushes too fucking hard. And I think sometimes you kind of have to call him back and tell him, hey, George, dude, you got to scale it back, dude. You can't be going at 1,000, dude. You can't. Your body's getting older. Your muscles are getting tighter. And that's exactly what happened. It was on a regular catch. He basically popped his Achilles and he's done for the season. And as a fan of sports in general, you never want to wish harm on a player, regardless of your affiliation, whether Whether you're a Raider fan or Niner fan, you never want to do that because it's somebody's livelihood, it's somebody's career. They're going to go through some stuff emotionally that's going to really challenge them mentally. Because George being older now, he's going to have to come back next year. We don't know what he's going to look like. We don't know if he's going to be gun shy. We don't know if he's going to be less explosive, if he's going to be timid. Because I tell you from speaking from different athletes, when you get an injury like that, the probability of you being with the same intensity, you scale it back a little bit because you don't want to re-aggravate your injury. But again, maybe George is one of those players that says, fuck it, and says, I'm going to play my style and it is what it is and let it go. But hopefully George Kittle comes back next year. We probably won't see him until probably October of next year. But we do have Jake Tonjes and Luke Farrell, which are the backup tight ends, and they're doing decent. Luke Farrell, I'm not a big fan of because he tends to fumble a lot, but he's a better blocker. Jake Tonjes is a way better receiver, much softer, harder hands. He fucking just has vice grips in those hands, and he holds on to the ball. The only problem is that he's not the best blocker, but that's something that he can learn and figure out. But anyway, so after George Kittle gets injured, he basically goes back into he leaves the game. The Niners stay into it, and freaking Christian McCaffrey, dude, CMC, the one-man show. He basically is the San Francisco 49ers this year. He's done it all: receiving, catching, blocking. I mean, inspirational leader, dude. I mean, the guy is just a phenomenal, great football player, man. I mean, he's got no drama. He's so intelligent, knows the game. He's humble, and he plays the fucking game very well, and he plays it hard. He's another intense player. So he alone, in my opinion, I think carried the game along with the schemes that were being called by Kyle Shanahan. The result was a successful game. Defense shut him down. Niners win and they advance. Philadelphia, on the other hand, are basically destroying each other right now, throwing a bunch of people under the bus. And I have a feeling a lot of people are going to lose their jobs in Philly. And now, with the level of talent that they have, there is no reason why this team is not being this successful. But it comes down to coaching. But the players also have a lot to do it too. And this is a really good segue into what I want to touch on. So my daughter is, as some of you know, she's doing comp soccer, and we're getting ready to do these tournaments. And I think we're getting to a point in age, and maybe you guys can correct me, of when do you step back and let your child figure it out on their own and find out what sport they want to do? Or do you see the one that they're doing very well in and you have them lock in and double down and make themselves a way even more better player? And when I mean by being a much better player, I don't mean them just focusing on one particular attribute in the sport. Like if they're playing defense, they're going to double down on defense and only be defense. I'm meaning like being a player that you are well-rounded, that the coach can put you in a different position and know that he's not giving away the farm. Yes, you are more known to be a defender, but you can also be a midfielder. So you can also play offense. And what I mean by that is that a lot of folks that I'm noticing as my daughter's getting old, a lot of parents are guilty of us thinking that our kid can only do one thing. And I understand that all of us, they want the glory and the fame of, oh, I want to be the one scoring the goals. But in reality, defense wins championships. You can score as much as you want, but how often is that going to happen? You need to have a good defensive line on the back end to help you out and hold players in. Otherwise, what's the point? And there's certain players that I'm seeing now when I see them in tournaments and I see them on social media. They want to focus on one thing when in reality the sport requires more, and it's not just an individual game. It's a team sport. Somebody has to pass the ball to you for you to score. You have to know how to read a play and read a room and read a defense for you to get into the open field and be available to receive the pass and do what you do. That takes skill. You're not just sitting there waiting for the ball to get to you. And I think a lot of parents are like, oh, my kid only plays offense. Like, well, that's your choice. But at the same time, if the coach is putting him on defense, it's not because the coach is trying to punish the kid, but it's a matter of making your kid much more well-rounded. And you can go the other way. Oh, my kid's a defender, and you put her on offense. Well, you're giving them an opportunity to try something different. Because once they get to this level, then they go into middle school, then they go into high school. That's it for their little careers. Unless you have a kid that is good enough to go into college, you have what? 1 more 3. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3 years in middle school, 4 years in high school. You have 7 more years. These kids have 7 more years in their little small career. So me as a parent, I'm thinking I want to maximize the most out of my child and have them have every single opportunity to do something. So that's where we're at. And right now in the tournaments that we're about to join, because a lot of the parents that I'm noticing are becoming very complacent and are not pushing enough for the kids to have repetitions. It's kind of like you're starting to see, and those of you who do have kids in comp soccer or in comp sports, you can attest to this, that there's always a separation of not just focus, but also what the end goal is here with this team. You're going to have parents that are going to want their kid to progress and become better. And then you're going to have parents that are going to be like, okay, I think this is enough with comp sports. We're going to try something else. And I think we're at this plateau right now as we speak. And I see it. And I hate to bash on this, but I saw my daughter's team practice, and because they have not had enough reps, they've been off for the holidays for about 1.5 to 2 months. They look rough. They look very rusty, and you can tell the players that have been working at their craft and have had reps and have had practice, and you can tell the ones that don't. It doesn't take away from them being good players in general, but I think when they take a break for 6 weeks or 7 weeks, there is a tendency to revert back to your bad habits, whether it's not scanning the field, not passing the ball, not kicking the ball properly, and just running with the ball, dribbling into another defender and not making anything out of it. So that's where we're at. Fortunately for me and my wife and my daughter, we are focused on self-growth and development. I think we asked my daughter this question, like, hey, do you want to go into college? And her response was, I want to play as long as I'm able to make a team. So if she makes it in high school, she makes it in high school. And if she's good enough to be accepted and play at a college level, she says she'll play at a college level. What that looks like, we don't know. We have 7 years to figure it out. But I'll tell you that we have tournaments coming up that are going to put a lot of things into question. I mean, we're going to play in the city of Davis, and it's called a pre-ECNL tournament. It's called the Legacy Tournament. And for some of you guys that don't know, the Legacy Tournament typically invites teams from different parts of the country. From Puerto Rico, from Idaho, from LA, from Washington State, from Texas. And the level of different skill sets is going to be all over the place. And it's going to be a great challenge, great opportunity. You're playing teams that you're not probably ever going to play again. But it's just an overall great experience. But a lot of us parents, the ones that are very privy to this, we know that the expectations have to be moderated. We cannot go into this tournament thinking that we're going to be killing it, because if anything, we're probably going to get smashed around, and we have to be okay with that. But again, we also have to have our own self-reflection and look at, okay, well, what did we do to prep our child for this game? Did we do enough? Because if we did not do enough to get them ready, then the results are going to show on the field, and you're going to be like, what? Don't blame the coach. The coach can only do so much, but he can't play the game for you. You as a parent have to focus your child into what they're going to do. So I think a lot of the parents at this point are starting to reach that level. And I think a buddy of mine had told me that that's what's going to happen around 11 years old. And that's what I'm looking at. And it's just weird to see. But before I digress into that, I do wanted to say that I'm not sure if a lot of you know who Fred Warner is. Fred Warner is the middle linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers, and he had hurt his ankle earlier in the season, and he's coming back. I mean, I think they opened the practice for him to come back. So that guy is a stud, and that is something that I think if you're a big fan of sports and if you have your kid in sports, I recommend that you look him up, research him, his injury, because the amount of dedication that he has to the sport and love of the game is just infectious and incredible to watch. So if you want anybody to emulate or your kids to really mirror their playing style or at least their ambition to play the game, that's a great person to do it. But let's digress into what the topic of today's episode is going to be. So I think I touched on it last episode that we spoke on the incident that happened in Minnesota. And the topic that we're going to talk about is going to be a little bit controversial. So trigger warning, completely like disclaimer right now that, hey, if you are anti what I'm going to say right now, just be ready. Just be open, receptive, and just listen to another person's point of view. Okay, so the topic I'm going to address right now is ICE. Okay, so before I dive into that, let's talk about where it started. So the Department of Homeland Security, the Tariff Act of 1789, long ass time ago, was the first major piece of legislation enacted in the United States after the founding fathers ratified the Constitution. Okay, so it had two purposes: to protect newly developed manufacturing industries and raise revenue for the fledgling federal government, right, which was struggling with debt left over from the American Revolution. Okay, that act laid the foundation for many laws related to imports, customs, and taxes over the next 213 years, right? Then, again, these are all acts and things that started to protect the country. And in March 2003, the Department of Homeland Security opened its doors. In 2003, and this has happened because of 9/11, right? So one of its major components was the Bureau of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This is in 2003. Okay, I'm going to say that again. In response to the 9/11 tragedy, the Department of Homeland Security opened its doors to the Bureau of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. Okay? And lawmakers gave ICE a unique combination of civil and criminal authority to protect national security and strengthen public safety. And throughout 2023, it's starting to spiral a little bit out of control. So this is when you create something that's intended for the good of the nation, and in the wrong hands, it spirals out of control. So as of, most recent, the current administration has been accused of abusing ICE against U.S. citizens in a few specific ways, right? Mostly centered on wrongful detention, aggressive tactics, and political targeting. And I speak on that because I think a lot of people forget what this is being used for, and in fact, how it actually should be used. Right? So in 9/11, you had a very, very tragic incident that prompted people to be a little bit apprehensive and look at people from different races and ethnicities, primarily a different religion, in a very different way. All right. There was a big, huge stigma on anybody that was Muslim because it was tied to the acts that happened. Now, again, I'm not picking sides here. I'm just telling you facts of what just happened, right? So that prompted this to be created, but it's spiraled out of control and it's been now manipulated by the current administration to benefit their narrative, right? And I think that's my whole thing about this is the manner in which this department in particular is being used. It's not in the best of light, and I'm going to give you a few reasons why. So number one, detaining U.S. citizens during raids or stops, because this has happened. So Minnesota officials and witnesses, as recently as Minnesota, they say that ICE or DHS agents have detained U.S. citizens during enforcement actions in the Twin Cities area, sometimes without warrants and with force. One widely reported incident involved 2 U.S. citizens allegedly detained at a Target in Richfield, Minnesota, and that was reported on January 8th. Then you had the incident versus Native Americans, right? The Oglala Sioux tribe, I think I'm saying that right, says that ICE is holding tribal members who are U.S. citizens, calling it illegal and a violation of treaty rights and tribal sovereignty. So they're going into tribal areas, getting people that are U.S. citizens and detaining them. So how this is escalated. So there has been over 170 plus cases in 2005 alone where citizens were detained by immigration agents, including some held without phone calls being made to lawyers or, I don't know, calling a friend. And we all know that this in fact is happening, right? So that's one way. Let me finish all this before I dive into a little bit of my narrative and all this. So using militarized tactics that critics say trample constitutional rights. So Minnesota AG and city leaders described the surge Operation Metro Surge involving armed and masked agents, militarized raids, and unconstitutional stops. So also being accused of targeting blue areas as political retaliation. Minnesota and Illinois lawsuits explicitly frame the enforcement surge as punishment of Democratic-led jurisdictions, arguing that the federal government is using immigration enforcement power to pressure or retaliate against political opponents. Number 4, using immigration enforcement in ways that chill protest/dissent. Some civil liberties reporting and analysis argue that ICE has been pushed toward broader public order or anti-dissent framing. Critics worry that expands ICE's footprint beyond immigration in ways that could sweep up citizens. So what that looks like is basically if there's a protest against anti-immigration policies, ICE is going to make a presence. By ICE being present, a lot of the people that are not necessarily breaking the law at all, they leave. So it's kind of like instead of using not the U.S. Marshal, but instead of using the National Guard when things get a little bit out of hand or local law enforcement, a lot of these local agencies or administrations are sending out ICE agents to disperse crowds. And again, that's kind of broadening what their actual job title is. And because of that, a lot of people are tying ICE with the current administration. So it makes it very, very difficult for ICE to do their job. And yes, I'm saying that it is making it difficult to do their job because honestly, if you do one way, you're a villain. If you do one way, you're too lenient. So what do you do? But this is where we're at right now. But the problem with me in particular that I have is when you make it a racial thing, is where I have the problem. And it just so happens that when it comes to immigration, you can't talk about immigration without talking about ethnicities, right? Like, who's the one that you're pulling over? Was their predominant ethnicity? And the problem that I had, and I think I brought it up in the previous podcast, was that a lot of the folks that are being detained are of Hispanic descent. I mean, these are the ones that are being reported on. I mean, I've seen videos in Colorado and Southern California where basically there is ICE agents showing up at job sites, right? Where a lot of the guys all break out, they all leave. There's ICE showing up in landscape industries. There's ICE showing up to hearings in court where basically when you are being given an opportunity to plead your case so you can either become a permanent resident or you're filing for some sort of immigration claim, that when you don't get the result that you want, ICE agents are literally waiting for you outside to take you in, because they automatically assume that you have been basically denied to stay in the country and they are escorting you out. The problem that I have with that is that you are literally violating a space in which someone is literally voluntarily going to plead their case. You're not even giving them an opportunity. You're literally grabbing them and putting them in a plane and sending them out. And at some point, there's got to be a limit or a conversation in which this has to be black and white. You can't just say, oh, if you're an ICE agent, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, because then you're kind of putting names on the ICE agents like, oh, they're Gestapo, they're doing this for the wrong reasons. They are immigrants themselves. They might be, but they're also doing their job. And if I have the job to do something, again, I don't know why I would work for ICE, but hey, maybe they get paid well. Who knows? But there's always a reason why you do these things. But because it's all tied to an administration that is very, very problematic, where a gentleman that has a lot of fame and a bad reputation, I mean, it messes you up. And it's hard for people to take you seriously. And I'll give you some examples. And you guys can Google this also while you're listening. So my question is the current administration and the person in power, have they ever been accused of, or do they have a reputation of not being very fond to other ethnicities, right? So the answer is yes. So I'll give you a few cases, and these are live ones. So the housing discrimination lawsuit in 1973, okay? The U.S. Justice Department sued a particular management company, including our current POTUS, alleging violations of the Fair Housing Act. The case ended in a consent decree requiring anti-discrimination steps and prohibiting discriminatory practices without an admission of wrongdoing. So basically, they settled out of court to make it go away. But in reality, they did it, but they said, hey, we're going to agree to this and we're going to consent, but we're going to do it without admission of wrongdoing. So it's not something that's recorded by them admitting to it. The Central Park Five. Trump took out a newspaper ads urging the death penalty after the teenagers' arrests. The men from the Central Park Five in 1989 were later exonerated. The episode has long been cited as a racially inflammatory and remains as a live controversy, including recent litigation over claims he repeated. Again, this is what this gentleman did. And what some of you don't know, the birther conspiracy about Mr. Barack Obama from 2011 to 2016. This particular gentleman promoted the false claims that Mr. Barack Obama wasn't born in the U.S. Many commentators and opponents called it, racist or discriminatory because it delegitimized. Did I say that shit right? Basically, it didn't make it valid that the first black president using conspiratorial framing. So, in other words, you were undervaluing and basically not validating the presidency because you were automatically saying that this person wasn't even born here. Now, again, did you have factual data? I don't know. But the point is that your name is all over the promotions, so you spent a lot of money out of pocket for you to make it known that that's what you wanted to bring up. Then in 2015, you have comments about Hispanics. When launching his 2016 campaign, the current administration and the gentleman in power described Hispanic immigrants as criminals and rapists. Okay. He did that. We all heard it. We all saw it. He never shied away from it. He said what it was. And then in 2018, reported by multiple outlets at the time and later discussed again, critics called it very anti-inflammatory and derogatory that he called certain countries a shithole. And they were primarily targeted against other ethnicities. Okay. Then in 2019, the go back tweets of Congresswomen of color, Trump told 4 Democratic lawmakers to go back where they came from. Okay. These were comments that he made via Twitter in 2019. Okay. And this was widely labeled, again, discriminatory in lawmakers and major outlets. So the reason why I bring this up is because if you are out there and you work for ICE, if ICE is being directed by these gentlemen to do certain things, they are being prompted by an administration that is giving them carte blanche or direct orders to proceed in a certain way. And I have a very tough time in defending one or the other. Like, I completely understand the narrative in which if somebody is here illegally and they are doing illegal activities and they are harming other U.S. citizens, then I completely understand the narrative and the need to have enforcement. The problem is that nobody is mentioning is that the U.S. does a really, really shitty job of validating and keeping track of who's here under the right way. There is no cross, like, if you want to follow cases like this, start with the lawsuits, city and statements. You have to track specific incidents. You have to cross-check with broader reporting and watch for court filings, declarations, evidence lists, judge orders. It's just, I mean, the fact that you're driving around pulling up random people, do you have any sort of documentation, or you're basically pulling people over just because they look a certain way? If they look a certain way and they sound a certain way. That's what we're dealing with right now. And it's being prompted by the gentleman who's currently in the administration. And unfortunately, ICE and the Department of Homeland Security is being labeled a certain way because the person in power is acting and behaving a certain way. And that is anti-right, in my opinion. I know that's not a word. I know that's not the right word, but that's where I stand on it. I disagree with what the gentleman does 1,000%. I'm not a big fan or a big proponent. But at the same time, there are certain things that he does that I will agree with. But in this one, you lost me. Because, again, and I want to share a little bit of a story, right? So, back in the 1980s, there was a very big involvement of the U.S. in multiple countries like El Salvador, Nicaragua, and the need for helping those countries, because there was a lot of controversy because of the communist movement and the Russia's involvement with those countries. And what the US wanted to prevent was, number one, drugs coming in from South America. And also, on top of that, you're going to have influence from Russia, which is a known, not enemy, but your op, I guess you could say, influence in Central America. So the US basically reached out to the existing government and said, hey, it looks like you kind of have a revolution on your hands. Let us provide you resources to do this. When this happened, when you give people that have never had any sort of power, when you give folks guns and weapons, power becomes like a drug. You become addicted to it. You become wanting more. And that's exactly what happened. The power was given to the wrong folks. They exploited their existing governments in El Salvador and Nicaragua, and they wanted to create a dictatorship in those countries. The U.S. came in with their help. They gave bigger guns to the opposite party. In return, they were going to have support from the U.S. and potential involvement. Now, when you have all these wars and battles going on, the stuff that you don't see on social media is that land was being taken away from people. So I'll give you an example. So for example, if you and your family owned 10, 15 acres of land, and the government, the winning side of the government, basically said, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have eminent domain over your land and use it for our political purposes. They could have gone to your house, kicked you out of your own house, and now that land belongs to the government and you cannot take it back. That's what happened. Now, when that happened and it became part of the government, what the winning party then would do, and this happened in my own country in Nicaragua, when this happened, so what Nicaragua would do is they would, okay, well, I got 40 acres of land or 10 acres of land. I want to reward my loyalist generals and people that have backed me up from the very jump. So what they did is that they issued these pieces of land to all these soldiers that they wanted to give those lands to. So even if the land belonged to you, it was ripped away from you and given to somebody else against your will. Then you went there and tried to get the land back, and guess what? You would be executed by it. That was real life in the 80s. That's what was going on in the 80s. People being arrested without probable cause or reason, never to be heard of. There's people in jail right now as we speak as political prisoners because they are anti-government and because the government, the current president of Nicaragua, sees them as a threat. He's going to keep their asses in jail. And that's the way that government operates. Here's the other side of that coin. If it had been given to the other side, the one that the U.S. was supporting, those people were guilty of doing the same shit, except they were exploiting farmers. They were exploiting the poor. They were exploiting every single possible thing that you could from the government, leaving it broke. We have one president, Somoza, back in the 50s, because his family basically was placed in power back, I think, in the 1900s or early 1920s, and they stayed in power until the 1960s or 70s when the revolution was basically took it over. They broke the country. Whatever profit, whatever money the Nicaraguan country made for itself was being absorbed and sucked up by this family. So that's what prompted the revolution, and the people fled. But the United States came in and said, we're gonna support the Somoza government. We're gonna give him all this money, just making shit worse. So in other words, to sum it up, you had two toxic sides of folks in society that were trying to take advantage of everything they possibly could, and the people in the middle were being affected. And they were being affected financially, their property taken away, their kids being abused, both women, children, adults. It was a fucking disaster. So what do you expect those folks to do? You want them to just kind of sit around and wait around? No, a lot of the immigrants that see in the United States are product of their own government. They came over here to the States to get away from that shit. Unfortunately, they might not necessarily have gone about it the right way. And this is where we are. But basically 2 or 3% of those idiots that are crossing the border for ill intent are not a reflection of the many. But yet we all get punished. And that's the problem that I have. And ICE agents are doing that same shit. You're going to construction sites. You're hitting up courts where people are legitimately trying to get their life together. Folks are actually working. They're not sitting on the street slanging drugs and doing all this other stupid shit. They're actually working a 12-hour day, putting up sheetrock. You know how difficult it is to put up sheetrock? They're doing construction work. They're doing labor work where they're digging trenches in the fucking rain. And people are complaining, oh, they're taking our jobs. They're not taking the jobs. You're just not applying for them. That's you. You're the one that's choosing and making the decision to live off the government, Section 8, or whatever you possibly can, whatever gimmies you can get. And in reality, you're not going out there and try to better yourself for any reason. But yet you're quick to bitch and complain when you see them on TV. Oh, yeah, you know, this and that. Like, they came here illegally. Yeah, they came here illegally, but you don't know the rest of the story. You don't know what steps or processes you're waiting on. There's always sides to every coin. Like, for example, I know of people, even where I work, that are currently going through the immigration process, and they've been waiting for a decision on their case now for 2 years. 2 fucking years. They're waiting on a decision for them whether they can stay or not. They've gone through every possible venue to make it legal the way they're here. So, and then you want to kick them out because you have a few of us with mental health issues that harm an innocent citizen, and everybody's up in uproar. But so that's the problem that I have. I mean, right now as a society, and again, I don't know if this is a reflection of the existing administration, but right now the U.S. is such a volatile state that I think a lot of us just don't know what's going on. We're just waiting for the shit to drop. You know, ICE overstepping boundaries, citizens overstepping boundaries. Everybody's on edge. Everybody's hypervigilant. Everybody's got PTSD. Everybody's super sensitive to everything. And nobody has answers, or nobody has any interest in trying to bring this shit together. I mean, we talk about wanting to make things better, and then we cut funding to mental health programs. We want to make things better, but then most recently, I think the administration passed a law where if you are in debt for your student loans, that they're gonna be able to garnish your wages, put a lien on your home if you have one, or they are going to be basically keeping any sort of tax refund that you're going to be getting at the end of the year. And unfortunately, we have to do our taxes every year, so they're going to get their money back. So then now you put people that are already struggling in a shitty situation and are looking forward to that tax refund. Now you're taking that away, so they're going to be even worse than before. What are the benefits in that? And people are celebrating this, this and that. Like, there is nothing for us to celebrate at this point. This administration, in my personal opinion, has left me in shock because it hasn't really done what it's said it was going to do, and the amount of fluff and BS that is being fed to a lot of folks is incredibly amazing. So we have to do a better job. Like I always tell people, make sure you read the two sides of the story. Don't fall for the narrative. Don't just read one side and automatically assume that you already know what the hell is going on. You don't. You have no flipping clue. None of us do. The people that were born in other countries, unfortunately, if you're a U.S. citizen and you are born here, this is all you know. But if you are an immigrant like myself or my parents were, they came to this country and saw it from the other side of the view, you would be gutted to the amount of shenanigans and lies that are constantly being fed to us. And we don't question it. And then we have a gentleman who is currently here now as we speak for the next couple of years, making decisions that are going to be a reflection of this country and a reflection of you. So if you ever go to any other country outside of the United States, don't be surprised by people treat you and talk to you a certain way. We are simply just guilty of association that we are in a government that a lot of countries don't necessarily find the best of places. But that is the hand we're being dealt. So do your research. Hopefully I didn't lose you too much on this one. Next week, we're going to go ahead and tackle something a little bit different. I'm going to pivot and do some conspiracy stuff too for next week. I'm going to change it up. I think I just focused on teens right now, talk about politics. I really don't like talking about politics too much because it's just like, I'm just going to spiral and I don't want to lose my audience members to that stuff because I know everybody has very strong and different opinions on it. So hopefully if you listen to this, take it with a grain of salt and just listen to a different person's perspective. You don't got to agree with me, but it's always good to listen. All right. So with that being said, have a beautiful and wonderful evening. Like I said, subscribe, like, share. And we're going to see if this episode actually gets monetized because the other one I got in trouble for. But anyway, feel free to drop a like or a comment and please provide some suggestions or maybe even some recommendations for any future episodes. We greatly appreciate it. All right. So thank you very much. And with that being said, good night. God bless and take care. I'll see you on the next one.